Open session, let's please open the doors and invite the multitudes
Eliyahu's coming.
back in.
If anybody wants to take a cookie.
You should watch him come back in now, yeah?
If anybody wants to take a birthday cookie that Penny made for me, please do.
It was Barry's birthday yesterday, so he gets birthday cookies.
Awesome. These look
And
great.
he's sharing. Would anyone like a cookie? You're definitely going to speed after that.
All right, so we're back in open session now, and we will get on to the regular agenda. So the first item, are there any additions or changes to the agenda? All right, just so everyone is aware, at your places are two handouts. One is for item 6A on the Southern Campus expansion. The other is for item 6B on the facilities use policy. All right, that brings us to section 2, public comments. The Orange County Board of Commissioners divides its public comments into 2 sections. One is for items that are not on the printed agenda, and we'll begin with those. If you have signed up or are here to speak to an item that is on the printed agenda, please make sure you sign up at the table in the back, and when that item comes up, we will hear your comments at that time. So there's one person signed up to speak for items not on the printed agenda, Rob Crook. Come on up, you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, thank you for letting me speak. Can everybody hear me? So I wanted to just give a brief little discussion about the idea of creating a non-motorized transportation corridor in Orange County tonight, and what it really would be, just hitting the high points. If you look at my great high-tech visualization data tool I brought with me, is that it's a non-motorized transportation corridor starting in Harborough right here, and then it heads out along the railroad line and the Norfolk Southern line all the way out to Old NC-10, would be really the Orange County part, and that's kind of what I'm here to highlight tonight. But as I started making a list of the different areas that this rail line would pass by, I realized that it really does tie in a lot of important points, in Orange County. And it spans the sector of public lands and also, private businesses as well. But it would go, tie in a lot of different schools. It would tie in the Sewell School and the high school. It would cut across Homestead and tie in a lot of Carolina North as a recreational facility. It would then tie in the Chapel Hill Transit property that's out there, and I believe there's also county property mixed in with that Chapel Hill Transit property that it would tie into. Emerson Waldorf School, it would also be a corridor that would allow kids to get to Emerson Waldorf. And as I drive along 86, you also realize that there are a number of mobile home parks where people would have really a lot better access to recreational opportunities along this corridor. So then it runs all the way out pretty much to Brumley, which is the new TLC, the Triangle Land Conservancy Park with the mountain biking and all that stuff. So you've got a lot of direct access to recreational opportunities. Further on, you're almost in the Eno River State Park, which people from Eno River involved with Eno River State Park expressed some support for the idea, because they said, look, if once you get out to NC-10 on a non-motorized transportation corridor, you're at Eno River State Park pretty much. And also there's some restaurants along that route as well that would also benefit from this. So you're benefiting businesses, you're benefiting a lot of the community. So you're getting out there, it also ends up out at NC-10, you're about anywhere from 4 miles to 6 miles from here, from downtown Hillsborough, depending on the route that you'd want to take for creating, some bike lanes and stuff like that out towards Old NC-10. The idea also is that it's forming a very large circle route. So it's not just Orange County, but eventually it would tie into Durham, it would tie into Duke University, and that would allow a corridor between Duke and also UNC, which would allow students to go back and forth between those 2 campuses. Then you're tying into the American Tobacco Trail in Durham, and once you're there, you're heading on back into Chapel Hill on a southern route, which, if you wanted to, I could explain that in a little bit more detail. Apologies for the low-tech data visualization tool. We are working on a map. I just didn't quite have time to put together a GIS map. I have something printed for you guys. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, great.
So I don't think there's anybody else signed up to speak, so we'll go on to announcements, petitions, and comments by board members, 3-minute limit per commissioner. We'll start with Commissioner Jacobs.
Let me see if I can read what I wrote. The group that's putting together the presentation on the rural buffer and joint planning agreement met again this week, and we'll have a presentation involving several planning directors, several elected officials, and several other people at the Assembly of Governments meeting on the 16th, I believe it is. Commissioner Markopoulos and I have been working on that. I got a report from the PFAP, which is we now call actually Piedmont Food Processing Center. And last year at this time, it had 34 users. This year, it has 56. It continues to marginally make money, and as our biggest clients move out, we have to regroup. Seal the Seasons just left. They had brought in a huge gas tank to do their processing, and they were so successful that they've moved to another operation, and so they were the big anchor tenant, just like Luna Pops was before that, just like several others were before that. And the chair of the Wake County Commissioners, Sig Hutchinson, is interested in having Wake become a partner. So I suggested to him that we might want to talk about having some triangle grouping to get together and talk about how we might work on local agricultural economy. And it's something that Mike Ortosky has been working on. So maybe we can work something out that brings everyone to the table. And meanwhile, we can hopefully get off the ground our idea of having the process available for people, local farmers, to get food into elementary schools in both school districts. And speaking of the schools, the manager is working, if I may call you the manager, she's working on the metric that we had discussed about trying to see what the impact was of developments in the municipalities on county services. And the Orange County schools have had a lot of difficulty getting a response from Hillsborough to their concerns about Collins Ridge. So I was hoping that somebody, maybe the manager as just an update, or could just bring that up at the Assembly of Governments, that we're working on this metric, just so that the elected officials, the managers know, but just so the elected officials know that we're trying to get a handle on what it actually means when the different jurisdictions have a development, what that costs in terms of schools, health, planning, erosion control, all those things that we provide. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Burrows?
So I'm not going to mention the name because I'm not sure if the release has gone out yet, but we have in fact, is it public, the name of the new health director?
It is public.
It is public. So I'm very proud to say that the Board of Health selected, with much help from some of our park department directors and the manager and our Human Resources Office, a new health director, Quintana Stewart. I believe she will do a fabulous job here. And what I really wanted to mention tonight is that the Board of Health served us very well. They worked really hard. They stuck to it when they didn't think that we had someone who would serve us the way that they had hoped, that would really protect the public health of Orange County residents. And after many, many hours of interviews and consideration of applications, they came up with an excellent candidate, so I'm real pleased about that.
Outstanding. Commissioner Rich?
Yeah, I had my technology and telecommunications meeting today with NACO, and that happens on the phone because we're from all over the country. So it's kind of weird to have a phone meeting, but that's the way it has to happen. But they did want me to express.
Well, it is a technology committee. So
Yeah, I know.
you
It's kind of weird though, because when everyone starts talking at the same time, you can't see that body language.
Right.
But they've wanted to express their thanks to everyone that signed on to the broadband letter. And, once again, we discussed that this broadband committee on the FCC is loaded with, it's just stacked with stakeholders that are related to broadband. There's only 2 local people on that committee. And so to try and overturn anything is really going to be very difficult right now. They've got the upper hand. One thing they did say that there's that's working in Congress right now, and John, if you can help us out with this, I don't know how this relates to feds versus the state and where we are with the state, but there's going to be a bill that's going to be introduced that the telephone companies could build on local right-of-ways without paying the county or municipalities anything for usage of the local right-of-ways. So I don't know how that differs from what the state is what's happening right now, and the bill hasn't been introduced yet, but this is a major concern, because if the telephone companies get away with it, the thought from our group is that anyone else is going to be able to start doing that. So if you could just look into that and see where that is and how it relates to what we're doing here. And then also something that Commissioner Jacobs was talking about a couple of meetings ago about how our numbers are predicted to grow and how sometimes and most times they're inaccurate. NACO is starting to collect or beginning to think about the 2020 census again. So I don't know who supplies numbers to them from our group, Ms. Manager. I don't know if it's IT or who does that. But right now it's pretty accurate. But what they do is they then do what Commissioner Jacobs was saying. They foresee the future, and it's not always correct. So I just want to make sure. I know that you have a petition in to look at that. If we could tie that in with the census also, so the benchmarking tool that they're using will be correct, as opposed to these numbers that we find at the MPO that are just outrageous. So.
And Mr. Benedict sent us an email saying that he is working on that.
Who did that?
Greg Benedict.
Greg, okay.
Yeah.
And that's it, yes, thank you.
Commissioner Markopoulos?
So in regard to the Rob Crook's presentation on the bike trail, I met with him a month or 6 weeks ago and had a real interesting conversation with him and invited him to come and bring it to us. And I really think we should pursue it. And I think a lot of people would support it. I mean, he's spoken to a lot of people about it, and I believe him when he says that everyone thinks it has some promise. So I don't know what shape that process would take. It seems like a meeting or two before it gets to us might be a sensible way to go, to get contact him, and I'd be happy to be a part of it. And so anyway, whatever everybody thinks would be the next best step, but I'd like to see it move forward.
May I ask a question? Is this similar to what was proposed 2 meetings ago, where we referred it to Mr. Stansel?
I think it's somewhat similar, although I heard some people wanting to, had a different idea as to where the path would go. This was more along the Norfolk Southern Norfolk Southern rail line, right, which is sort of a major part of the plan, whereas there were some of the other stuff that was mentioned was like just go across the county, go buy some nice farms and stuff. But
I think the manager wants to speak on this.
So part of some of the information came out of the Mountains to Sea Trail, that mobility corridor, or modal corridor, and then also, this keeps going away. Then also, we're going to, as staff, we're going to be looking at a mobility connectivity plan, a countywide mobility connectivity, and I've set up a meeting with, and we haven't had our first meeting yet, but with staff, David Stansel, Craig Benedict, and we're going to figure out who else should be at the table. But this would be part of that, to look at not just pedestrian paths, bike paths, all different paths throughout Orange County that would be in our jurisdiction, and also connecting to outside of our jurisdiction. So we will be looking at that, and we may have some information at budget time. We also would look at sidewalks. That was also part of it, was the sidewalks, and we will have more information about that for the retreat in January regarding cost and what that means and how we prioritize those.
I think it would be useful to have Rob at least come to one meeting for a brief time and share more of what he has learned. He's talked with Norfolk Southern folks, and he has, he has a map.
We'll refer that to agenda review to schedule that, and in conjunction with what the meetings that the manager's talking about.
Sounds good.
Commissioner Rich, you had a question?
I just want to make sure that this in no way stops our continuing progress on the Mountains to Sea Trails. It's something that's completely different.
This is separate from the Mountains to Sea Trail.
Okay.
So the other thing, I sent you an email about this event tomorrow night at the Friday Center, NC Clean Path, looking at, it's an NC Warren sponsored event with an expert on renewable energy, battery technologies, and I actually met with this guy, Bill Powers, last year with members of NC Warren. I used to be on the board of NC Warren a couple of different times, so I'm connected with them, and they invited me in, met with him, and he really knows his stuff, and we actually had a meeting with Jeff Thompson and Brennan Boom and David Stansel and myself and members of NC Warren just to talk about how they might potentially work with us as we try and fulfill our desire to move determinedly toward renewable energy, and build on the proclamations and resolutions. So anyway, it would be a great event tomorrow night if you could come out. I got these to pass around if you want 'em. And then one last real quick thing. I had two people in the last 3 weeks from out in the rural area of the county ask me what I could do about incessant gun noise at odd hours. And I remembered my very first meeting when that place was full of people talking about the firearm ordinance, and noise was brought up and discussed a little bit and put off as something that rightfully could not be decided that night. At any rate, I bring that up on their behalf and wonder how we might address this, because it's a real problem.
I think we have a discussion of a bunch of ordinance reviews that includes the noise ordinance coming up at an upcoming work session.
Yes.
So, and I think the noise ordinance is one of those.
Okay, great.
So, thank you. Renee? I mean, Commissioner Price, I'm sorry.
I answered to both.
I know, but I was told that we've adopted a policy to call each other commissioners, so.
Yeah, well, so I was asked to talk about, by the committee, to talk about the Veterans Memorial, the Veterans Day event at the Veterans Memorial. The planning committee, as usual, they met at 8 in the morning. Anyway, we're planning an event for next Friday, and everyone should have gotten an invitation by now, which is the observed holiday. It's going to be at 11 o'clock, which would be after the breakfast. That's at the Passmore Center, and it's going to be at the site, and we'll be celebrating the completion of the first phase while honoring our veterans. Just so folks know, the site is ADA accessible with a pathway of fine gravel that leads to the flagpole. I know last time there was some difficulty with anybody that was in a wheelchair. And just so you know, it's 6 feet wide right now, but I'm lobbying Jeff to make it 7 or 8 feet wide so that people can pass. And the other thing is that prior to Veterans Day, or I think on the day, the sheriff's office is cooking, I don't know how many hundreds of pounds of barbecue to sell. I think it's like 600 pounds of barbecue that they'll be selling and to raise money for the memorial. And I understand you can place I don't know, Todd, you may know this better than I do, they place the order, or even Jeff, you can place the order and pick it up, or they'll deliver it to you. But anyway, the proceeds will go to the construction of the memorial. And last year, there were rides from, well, there was a bus that would take people from the breakfast to the site, but I think only 7 people used it, so we might try to carpool this year, if anyone needs to. And I also have, if you want to look at the plans, the working plans of the memorial. Secondly, I attended the State of the Schools event that was hosted by Orange County Schools, and it was amazing. I thought it was going to be your typical boring, well, I shouldn't say boring, but, you know, kind of institutional type, you know, report. But we got there, and there were exhibits by the students. And then, well, they had it in the lobby. It was at New Horizons Church, and they had their artwork in the lobby. And then at one point, I think it was from Orange High, but they had a chorus that sang. Then we went in for lunch, and another group sang. And I think the highlight actually was when the little kids from Cameron Park came, and they showed us how to dance with your hands and everything else. So anyway, it was very impressive. But on a serious note, Dr. Todd Wirtz spoke about the challenges and successes of Orange County Schools. They are now engaged in 3 points: achievement, equity, and modernization and growth. One announcement that he made is that New Hope Elementary School will become a dual language school next year, and he's really excited about that. And then at the end, he asked that those of us that were there to fill out these forms that were on the table to let the district know what it is that we want to know about Orange County Schools. So they're trying to get feedback from the general public as to what they want to know to make things better. So I imagine you could just forward, if you do have any requests, just forward them on to Dr. Wirt or to Seth Stevens. And then finally, I'd just like to put in another push again for Orange County to move forward on other projects or to expand on the Family Success Alliance, because NACO is looking more at the multi-general approach to ending the cycle of poverty. So I'll just put that out there. And I know how those conference calls are. I get like over 100 people on and trying to corral them.
Commissioner McKee.
I have no petitions, but my apologies for being late. I had a calf born about 4 o'clock this afternoon. I received a call on the way up here from a neighbor telling me that calf was in distress, and so I went back, and the calf was not in distress. It was just
Being a calf?
trying to nurse. So. But therefore, I was late. My apologies.
No worries. I just will mention, last week I was invited to give the keynote address at the IFC annual meeting, and it was a really great meeting. You know, there was a lot of talk about all the exciting stuff that's happening, the food share, and you know, it was a great new executive director, and real exciting engagement around a lot of conversation about, and I emphasize this in my talk, that we need to do more than just help people who are in poverty, but really work to include them fully and engage them in our community. And so it was a wonderful event, and I was honored to represent the county there. So. All right, moving on to item 4, proclamations, resolutions, and special presentations. The North Carolina Ann Johnson Senior Center of the Year Award for the Robert and Pearl Seymour Center. The board will join with the Department of Aging staff in accepting the North Carolina Ann Johnson Senior Center of the Year Award for the Robert and Pearl Seymour Center. Janice Tyler and her colleagues, Brittany Williams, chair of the North Carolina Senior Center Alliance, will make a presentation.
And that's what I was going to say. I was going to introduce Brittany Williams, the chair of the North Carolina Senior Center Alliance, and she's going to have a few words about the award.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. If you aren't aware of the North Carolina Senior Center Alliance, we are a program section of the North Carolina Agency on Aging. And our purpose is to provide opportunities for senior center professionals to advocate for the seniors that they work with in related senior issues, network and collaborate on common issues, share information, co-market initiatives, and provide staff training and development. This is our second year of giving out the Ann Johnson Senior Center of the Year Award. This award is an opportunity for member organizations to share how they are excelling in the field of aging by meeting or exceeding 5 criteria. They are creating innovative approaches to enhance and expand direct services to older adults in the community, delivering high-quality programs and dedicated staff, providing strong leadership and organizational management to their organization and the Aging Network, making significant contributions that address and elevate issues important to the field of aging, and being champions for senior causes through advocacy or other methods that make a positive impact to the seniors of their community. I am pleased to announce that the 2017 recipient of the Ann Johnson Senior Center of the Year Award is the Robert and Pearl Seymour Center of Orange County. They received the highest scores for each of the criteria listed above, and some of the remarks from the judges were that they offer a large variety of programs and activities to a diverse population, are dementia-friendly, and have a bilingual staff, and should be praised for that. Amazing creativity and diversity in their programming. It is evident that staff is working hard to appeal to all types of older adults, allowing their services to be inclusive. And they are very strong in all areas with great leadership and support for the seniors of Orange County. So not only will the Robert and Pearl Seymour Center receive this award, but they were also given a $300 mini grant to be used to support the center and its terrific programming. And so amazing things are happening at the Robert and Pearl Senior Center. Being state and nationally accredited, the Alliance believes that they are setting a standard in the field of aging. And so without further ado, I am pleased to present the 2017 Ann Johnson Senior Center of the Year Award to the Orange County Department of Aging, Robert and Pearl Seymour Center.
Get together for a picture.
So I'd just like to recognize the staff that are here this evening. So Sydney Sims is the Operations and Program Manager at the Seymour Center.
Come forward. Be
With the award.
recognized.
Myra Austin is the Senior Center's Administrator. And Isabel Jackson is our Food Service Coordinator.
Thank you all for all the great work you do for the county.
And Janice, if I may?
Yes, of course.
Could you tell the board and the people who are listening about Ms. Johnson, if they did not have the pleasure of meeting her?
Sure. So Ann Johnson was definitely a pioneer in aging. I was sharing at dinner this evening with Brittany, and she didn't realize our close connection to Ann Johnson. So Ann did a majority of her work in Durham County, but she was always a resident of Orange County. So when she retired, we encouraged her to come and join us. So she joined, was actually a board member for the Friends of what was then the Chapel Hill Senior Center. She remained involved with us for many, many years. And she was also very instrumental in us being able to have the funds to become nationally accredited. For her 80th birthday party, she asked guests to make a contribution to a fund for us to become nationally accredited. So she was really Miss Senior Center nationally. So, yeah.
Thank you.
And she was also one of those women who worked during World War II in
She was a
factory.
welder.
Was a welder, yeah.
Yeah, she was a welder. She was quite a lady, quite a lady.
Thank you.
All right, there are no public hearings tonight, so we go on to the regular agenda. Item 6A is the award of the Southern Campus Expansion Professional Services Agreement. The board will consider voting to approve entering into a professional service agreement with Smith Sinnott Architecture of Raleigh, NC, for the design and construction administration of the Southern Campus Expansion Capital Project upon final review of the county attorney, and authorizing the manager to execute the agreement and any subsequent design amendments for contingent and unforeseen design requirements on behalf of the board. Angel Barnes will make the presentation. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Angel Barnes with Asset Management Services. Thank you for your time tonight. Tonight we have Jeff Thompson, Director of Asset Management Services. We have Rhonda Angerio, President of Smith Sennett Architecture, and Drew Wilgus, Project Architect with Smith Sennett. So the presentation we have for you tonight is a brief overview of the Southern Campus expansion. And as you'll see, we've lifted the purpose from the abstract, which is for your approval of the professional services agreement to Smith Sennett Architecture of Raleigh, North Carolina. This is for the design and the construction administration of the Southern Campus expansion. In 2014, the Board of County Commissioners adopted a master plan for the Southern Campus site, which allowed for a 25-year build-out. As a component of this master plan, this second project includes adding more parking, changing the entrance roadway, upgrading the stormwater, and adding additions to both the Seymour and the Southern Human Service Centers. As you may recall, the first project was the additional 10-foot sidewalk along the Homestead Road under this plan. Let's see here. There we go. In 2015, we began the visioning process for this project, and we met with staff, and together we composed plans for the expansion to the Southern Human Service Center and the Seymour Center, and provided additional parking and roadway changes that would be needed. During the 2017 budget review process, staff merged 3 projects together to create one master project for the Southern Campus. These 3 projects were the Southern Campus expansion, Southern Human Services Center expansion, and the Seymour Center renovations and additional parking. In May of 2017, staff received responses for the request for qualifications from 6 firms, whom we have listed here. Staff reviewed and interviewed all 6 of these firms. The staff panel consisted of members from the Health Department, Department of Social Services, Department on Aging, Manager's Office, Clerk to the Board of County Commissioners Office, Housing, Human Rights and Community Development, Department of Environment, Agriculture, Parks and Recreation, and Asset Management Services. The staff panel did select Smith Sennett Architecture based on their experience with similar projects, their work portfolio, their creativity, ideas, and their team approach during the interview. We have negotiated a service agreement with Smith Sennett Architecture for a not-to-exceed amount of $889,540. This agreement covers all of the design and construction administration for the complete project. This project is broken out into phases. Phase 1 incorporates the design of the expansions to the Southern Human Services Center, the Seymour Center, and the parking additions, including the roadway and stormwater work. The construction is scheduled to start on this in the the design is scheduled to start in the winter of 2017 and be completed by the winter of 2018. And then the construction would start immediately following in winter of 2018 and complete in winter of 2019. Phase 2 of this project would be the construction of the Seymour Southern Human Services Center, which is scheduled to start in year 3 of our current capital investment plan, provided that the board approves and appropriates the funding for that construction. As you'll see here on this slide, we have the existing Southern Campus site as it is today. The next slide shows you what the new site is with You'll see the light gray area showing the existing driveway as it is today, and you can see the new improvements for straightening out the roadway. So at this time, I would like to turn this presentation over to Rhonda Angerio, President of Smith Sennett Architecture.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you, Commissioners. I'd like Drew to join me, if that's all right with all of you.
Sure.
We are, if you can run this, because I left the glasses over there.
You could go get them if you
He's back. It's too late. We're incredibly pleased to be here. We've been working real hard with Jeff and Angel, and we're just excited to start this project. The slide you see before you is our most recent Health and Human Services project, Consolidated Human Services for Onslow County in Jacksonville, North Carolina. To tell you a little bit more about us, we're celebrating our 41st year in business. We're a woman-owned business, award-winning, and we have focused on municipal, governmental, and community work throughout our entire career. What else can I tell them? We're about 20 people strong. We have plenty of people to get started on this. Drew will be our project architect as well as our project manager.
Yep.
And you can feel free to ask any questions you like as well. This is a photograph of the exterior of that same project down in Onslow County. So I guess I've sort of told you a little bit about our history. Maybe we could talk a little bit about how we see working with you. Want to jump in?
Yeah.
So our goal is always to get to know you all very well and to work with all these great people that we met even during the interview that will be using this space and working as hard as we can to understand your objectives, being frugal with your money, but also building inspiring spaces that will last a lifetime.
We understand that you've been through the whole process of getting an approved SUP. We'll be working within those parameters, of course, and it's also been mentioned by Angel and Jeff that sustainability is at the forefront, so we'll be looking at incorporating as many of those as the budget will allow. I guess on a personal level, I'm excited to work on the project. I live in Hillsborough, so working in my backyard would be kind of a dream. So
We drive a lot, but this is easy for us. So we're just so pleased to have been chosen for this great project, and we would love to answer any questions, and we look forward to working with you.
Well, thank you so much. Did you want to add anything? I'm sorry.
No, sir, I just wanted, our last slide is again the purpose of this request, and at this time, we're open for any questions you have.
Thank you so much. Are there questions for either Ms. Barnes or Smith Sennett? Commissioner Rich?
Well, thank you. It's nice to know that we're going to work with a woman-owned business. Along that same line, I'm sure you know that we, some of our goals are to pay a living wage to our employees, and we hope that you would do the same. We know that we can't make you do that, but we would hope that you would do the same, and also have be inclusive and our non-discriminatory practices against everybody, including the LGBTQ community. So we hope that our values will be your values as well.
Those are our values, absolutely.
Thank you.
Commissioner Price?
Yeah, first of all, thank you. I'm excited, especially, someone that's local. It's always nice, because there's ownership in it. My question probably is for Angel. The road, what is the slope of that road going to be once it's straightened out? Is it going to be hard to climb? And if so, how are people going to be able to enter into the, if they're walking to the senior center, if that slope is?
We're going to have to manage that with our civil engineer and landscape architect to make that, code compliant for one thing, accessible, as easy as it can be for that kind of transition. But really, we have to get into it to figure it out.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
But we will.
Other questions? Comments? All right, then we're asked to approve entering into a professional service agreement with Smith Sennett Architecture for the design and construction of the Southern Campus Expansion Capital Project, subject to review of the final review by the county attorney, and to authorize the manager to execute the initial agreement and any subsequent design amendments for contingent and unforeseen design requirements on behalf of the board.
So moved.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0. Congratulations. All right. Moving right along. Item 6B, Facilities Use Policy Amendment for Inclusion of Community Center Facilities and Fee Schedule Changes. The board will consider amending the county's facilities use policy to, 1, recognize and govern the recently renovated Cedar Grove, F1 Cheeks, and Rogers Road community centers. 2, update reservation operation and cancellation processes. 3, update the fee schedules for non-park and recreation spaces. 4, address the requirement to ensure adequate meeting space for advisory and quasi-judicial boards, according to our advisory board meeting overflow policy. And 5, update the guidelines regarding the availability and sale of alcoholic beverages on county premises. Jeff Thompson, take it away.
Good evening, Jeff Thompson, Orange County Asset Management Services Director. Thank you so much for your time. This, as you can see in your packet, is a multi-faceted purpose. We'd like to go through these amended or the suggested amendments for the policy, take your questions, and then have any discussion as you see fit. Just for background, this policy was initially adopted by the board in 2011. Its design was to bring some order to the facilities use policy or facilities uses as most of the new construction came online. Annette Moore is here tonight to assist. She was one of the crafters of the document with a significant staff collaboration. We've amended this once in September of 2014 when this floor came online. It was actually brought into the policy. In June of this year, we brought on you adopted the 3 community center operating agreements, and part of this policy amendment tonight is to bring those 3 on as official spaces or facilities for the policy. Rogers Road Community Center was actually, that operating agreement was adopted in 2014, but it's officially coming on tonight. And we've had for the past couple of years an interdepartmental collaboration. I'd like to introduce some folks that have put a lot of time and effort, good work into that. Alan Dorman with Asset Management Services. Tammy Komar, who is also with Asset Management Services, and she's the Chief Administrator of the Facilities Use Policy. Dave Stansel and his staff were involved, Annette as well, the manager's office, the clerk's office, and you can see everybody that was participating in that. The focus here was to really make the policy better. We'd had a couple of years under our belt, and it was designed to really make it better for staff, make it better for residents, make it just easier and more effective to use. We've recently, after a petition to the board regarding the alcohol policy, have had conversations with our local jurisdictions, the town of Hillsborough, and most of our staff on making the alcohol component of the policy more effective. Currently, the manager can essentially allow alcohol sales or service on county property, but this, you'll see, allows a little bit more clarification in that respect. So I'm going to run through these, the highlights. You've got all of this in your packet. Again, the theme is efficiency and lessons learned. The community center integration is simply to bring those facilities on as Class 6 facilities, which means that they can be used for resident or non-resident or public purpose activities. And they have a certain range of hours that are either operated by the community center, neighborhood associations, or staff. And you can see that you've got links to the policy language within the suggested policy. The second are fee schedules. In the spirit of making it easier and streamlining it, we've suggest one fee for both resident and non-residents for Class 6 facilities. Essentially, that just makes it easier for everyone to understand and to administer the fee policies. A Class 6 facility is essentially a use that the public can have if it's not related to public purpose. The overall average fees are reduced. They're simplified for county residents, and we continue to recognize the Parks and Rec fees that were adopted in the budget as an independent set of fees. From an operations standpoint, we've extended hours. We've extended to 7 days a week for use for facilities. And the Lands Legacy site process stays independent. The reservation adjustments, again, the theme is making it easier. We now have an immediate confirmation of a reservation upon receipt of payment. We've got an 180-day, a 6-month advance reservation as opposed to 3 months. And continuous reservations are now accepted if they're not in violation of someone else trying to use the facility within 5 days. Cancellations, we now accept emails as opposed to written, that qualifies as written communication. And we have a full refund of rental fees for written cancellations. In the past, there was a fee for, we kept some of that. So it's more fair, it's again easier to use. A part of your packet is the manager's administrative policy for overflow. That essentially states that we are required to provide adequate space for the quasi-judicial or the advisory board meetings if there happens to be a larger crowd than is necessary. We have to find that space, and we do that. And we partner with our local partners, our schools, if we have even a larger meeting. So we have facilities that can hold up to 300 folks, but if we have to go beyond that, we've got the ability to do that with our partners. The alcohol use suggestions essentially involve clarifying the policy, adding more language that it basically allows the manager to approve contingent upon local jurisdiction approval, local law enforcement approval, the ABC board approval for either sales or service, the right permitting to be in place. As part of your handout is the draft application for that, if that's the last page of that handout. It also calls out the Economic Development Office to liaison with local businesses to make sure that they can be shepherded through the process. This is an ongoing conversation in terms of the mechanics with local jurisdictions, but it is a positive process, and we feel confident we're all on the same page in that respect. The financial impact associated with this is essentially if you adopt the new fee structure, we'll do a budget amendment for this year, and it will carry forward into the budget cycle for FY 18-19. And with that, I'll bring us back to the recommended or suggested actions and answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Are there questions? Commissioner Price.
I noticed, and this might just be an oversight, but for the Rogers Eubanks or Rogers Road Community Center, what about Saturdays from 6 to 11? Is the public allowed to rent then?
Alan Dorman, Business Officer, AMS. Yes, they would be. That's just an oversight, ma'am.
Okay, because in the abstract, like I said, maybe it was an oversight on my part, but it said that on Saturday between 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., RENA would operate it, but it didn't say after.
Yes, the public can use it afterwards. That's part of that operating agreement section where it's either them or someone else using it. The facility is not prohibited from use after 6 p.m.
Right, I saw it for the other two, but not for that one, but that's just in the abstract. Then I had another question, and I think you were alluding to it here. Number 5 in the reservation adjustments, allow continuous reservations to be accepted no more than 5 business days in advance. What does that mean?
Essentially, if we had a situation actually today, the school system used this facility for 3 days straight. If you, for instance, wanted to reserve something within that rolling 5-day window as it moves forward in time, that wouldn't be allowed because we wouldn't want to bump you.
Oh, I
But
see,
in that
okay.
5-day window, if there's nothing reserved, we'll allow that. And in the past, that was problematic because we weren't allowing that type of a reservation.
Right, okay, I thought so, I just wasn't sure the way it was written. Now, on the cancellations, within, 48 hours, you get your money back, but if not, if it's less than that, then we keep the fee? Is that what we're doing? Or suggesting that we do?
We keep the fee in that case.
And what is, I mean, I can understand if there's an app, for a processing fee or something like that application, but why are we keeping the fee? It's not as if we're running a business where, we're dependent upon having a facility booked at all times.
Well, we do want to make our customers aware of the value of the space, and we want to prevent people from basically booking it and holding it, and then if something doesn't work out, then they can cancel it without no risk to them. So it allows the public the best chance of having a fair use of the space by making sure that everybody appreciates the value of the space.
Well, would they have paid the full amount prior to? And then you're saying no refund on the full amount?
Yes, ma'am, but that's the part of the new policy is basically they can reserve the space immediately by paying the full amount. They can also pay by cash or check, and we'll reserve it once that's done. But yes, the idea is that it's reserved as soon as they pay for it. And if they cancel 2 weeks beforehand, then they get a full refund.
Actually, 48 hours prior to that. Oh, if it's just 2 weeks, but the 48 hours, there's no
That's to
refund.
Alan's point about it being some sort of risk so that there's not a situation where someone else
2
may
week-
have wanted it but now can't get it.
2 weeks or
because-
2 days?
Well, there's 2 weeks, it's a full refund. 2 days, it's kept. 2 weeks or more if it's canceled.
I just have a problem with that.
Okay.
I don't, I mean, of course, there's 6 other commissioners to vote on, but, to keep the full amount, if something comes up and they have to cancel within 48 hours, I would think that, partial refund, I mean, I can understand a processing fee, but, it's not as if we're running to me, it's not as if we're running a business where we have to rely on having it, all spaces booked all the time. I understand the inconvenience to others because I say, well, I could use that space, but. And the final thing is, so does this form, is this supposed to replace the state permit?
No, ma'am, that's the form that the county manager ultimately approves for alcohol sale or use on county property.
Oh, that goes along with the
form-
permit?
Yeah, there's a section of that form that shows conditions precedent where the applicant needs to bring the local jurisdiction, like a zoning permit from the town of Hillsborough, or a law enforcement permit, and the ABC permits, and the insurance, to allow the manager to say, yes, you've been provided permission from all of those folks.
It might seem like duplicative for people trying to apply because you're going to have to go through this to get the state permit anyway.
Correct. But we're not going to recommend to the manager that she approve it without the state permits in hand.
Right, okay.
Other questions? Commissioner Rich?
Do you have to have a state permit?
You have to have,
Yeah.
well, there's a variety of permits. If you're selling, you have to have essentially a retail
Or
permit.
if you're just pouring, you don't need a
If you're
state permit?
pouring, you need essentially a
Liability insurance.
You need liability insurance and a single-use permit to pour.
Really?
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
I don't need a single-use permit to pour. I use liability insurance, and I don't need a permit. You might want to check on that. Because I mean, that's what I do for a living. I don't need to get a permit.
But see, you do it for a living as opposed to the one-day
Right, but
event.
they can have someone come in that does it for a living, and then they don't,
So it depends on the amount of liquor that or spirits or
Right.
malt that you're pouring. So it may
this
be.
is wine and beer. We're not
Right.
doing spirits.
So in your case, there may be an exception for caterers or for the amount that you are pouring versus someone else, like a beer garden. It may be over the limit.
Right.
So if it's over the limit, then it does require a permit.
Right, but you can have someone like me come in and use my insurance to cover it. I've done it before.
I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
which is different than us having a large event where a brewery or something is coming to one of our properties to sell or pass out liquor.
Yeah, I'm just trying to simplify, because sometimes it's easier to just hire someone like myself to come in that has insurance than it is to go through the whole process of getting the state permits.
And so that's why we'll be looking at, the manager will be looking at all of these things to determine when a permit is necessary.
Right.
When it's not, but when it's necessary, they'll have to acquire it.
Excellent, thank you.
Commissioner Jacobs.
I just want to go back to something that you said, Mr. Thompson. You said something in relation to the form on the last page of our packet that, about being coordinated with economic development. Is that
That's actually
indicated?
that's in the language, I'm sorry, that's in the language that's called out in the actual suggested revision for the policy. The last page, I was referring to the application for alcohol.
As opposed to someplace else where it's written out explicitly, not here. And so, okay, and so is that person in economic development going to explain that the municipality may have one set of rules and the county may have otherwise had a different set of rules, and who's responsible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 'Cause
That's, the idea is to shepherd that process.
okay, good.
And
'Cause-
hopefully those rules are complementary and not opposed to one another.
Yes, so that solves our problem that we had 2 months ago.
Right.
Thank you.
Commissioner McKee?
Yeah, I'm sure that legal has already looked at this, and so I just want some assurance that this liability over anything that might possibly happen will not bleed back off of the host or the person that is leasing these properties or renting these properties back on the county in any way.
There's a host liquor liability policy, and there's a general liability policy required by the applicant that the risk manager will have to approve before recommending to the manager for final approval.
And that specifically indemnifies the county?
Yes.
Commissioner Jacobs?
I want to go back to Commissioner Price's point about the refund. What's the largest fee that someone would have to pay for a one-day use of any of our facilities?
Largest fee we've charged. For perspective, I think we had 2,000 in fees budgeted this year or last year, and we collected like 900. Most of the events are not heavily charged.
The largest single fee that anybody would ever have to pay per hour is $125 an hour. So,
And so if they were reserving something for 4 hours, they would pay $500 up front, and then if they canceled 2 days before, they would forfeit that $500?
yes, if they canceled between 48 hours and the time of the event, then they would forfeit that $500. That is correct.
And that's also been a part of the policy since 2011.
Sure. And what happens if there's a difference in interpretation as to whether, shouldn't use that word, as to the effect of the weather on the availability or the advisability of the event going forward? Who decides that?
That would be my responsibility.
So
I
if
would-
they
I would
think
believe
it's
that.
not, if the person who paid thinks it's not safe and they don't want to have their people come,
Right.
that's independent of whether you think that's the case, is it not?
Well, we've worked with folks before about a common sense solution to that. What we're trying to do is incent folks not to cancel for any reason, which would put someone else out who may have wanted that space.
And do you have or you or the manager have the flexibility to reduce or waive the fee if someone can show you it's a hardship to have to
Absolutely.
pay it? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So I have one. I mean, this policy is for the 3 community centers, right? That we're talking
No, sir,
about?
that policy is for any facility that is available for public use, like this room, for
Okay.
instance. We're adding those 3 centers One, Rogers Road in 14 was never brought onto the policy, and Eflin Cheeks Community Center in its new form with the United Voices of Eflin and the new community center at Cedar Grove, that's that intent. And as we bring on other rooms or other buildings that are available for use, you'll see amendments to bring those on as they come forward.
Great. Did you
One
want to add something?
clarifying point. The county manager has the right at any point to refund all fees if she views the inclement weather to be an issue for the reason of the cancellation of an event.
All right, any other discussion or debate? All right, then. We're asked to approve this policy. So is there a motion to that effect, to approve the policy to include the 3 community centers, update the reservation operations and cancellation process, update the fee schedules and for non-parks and recreation spaces, address the requirement to assure adequate meeting space for advisory boards, and to update the guidelines regarding the service or sale of alcoholic beverages?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Price.
Yes, I still would like, many of the groups that use the spaces are nonprofit organizations, and I would just like to see that it'd be more of a policy or practice that we charge an administrative fee if a group has to back out at the last minute, regardless of its weather or whatever. They may have some other extenuating circumstances, but I'm just against holding on to $500 as the example was given, and creating a hardship for that nonprofit.
So are you making an alternative motion or
Friendly
offering
amendment,
amendments?
a friendly amendment that the cancellation fee be a minimal fee for processing.
Does the maker of the motion accept that friendly amendment?
Can I clarify
Yeah.
something? There's a Class 6 facility, which is resident or non-resident, for-profit, or someone who's not in public purpose. We don't charge the public purpose entities for those uses. That's not a Class 6 use.
Yeah, but there's still nonprofits that may use it, correct?
But we
Even
don't
if it's
charge
not-
those.
You don't charge nonprofits? Yes, you do.
So we're really looking at people that would be booking the space for weddings and stuff like that. That's who's going to end up being charged. And that's,
Oh, not a nonprofit organization?
I'm sorry for that
Okay.
miscommunication, yes.
Oh, okay.
Are you standing by your amendment?
If nonprofits are not going to have
No, they're not.
to pay, then I'll let it go, because they can still go to the manager.
Okay, so the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. There are no reports tonight, so we go on to the consent agenda. Is there any item that anyone wishes to remove from the consent agenda? All right, then. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, minutes, motor vehicle property tax releases, applications for property tax exemption, substation use agreement between Orange County and the Eno Volunteer Fire Department, changes in our meeting schedule?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda in its entirety. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. County Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and County Board of Commissioners. I've just got 2 things tonight. The first thing is an update on the affordable housing parcels, county-owned parcels. We did release a request for proposal. We received 3 proposals. On October 23rd, the group met to look at those. We were hoping to have them for tonight, but we will have them for the next meeting on November 20th. There were some questions that came up about those requests, but we will have those on the 20th. And then finally, on a week from tonight, on November 9th, there will be a regular work session, and we'll be talking about BOCC boards and commission selection process. and an ordinance review presented by our own county attorney. So I will conclude my report on that. Thank you.
Thank you. County Attorney's report. Mr. Roberts.
Just something about that work session. So board members have asked to revisit a couple of ordinances. So that gave me the idea that to look at the ordinances in more detail. There are several that are outdated and needs substantial revision. One or two are probably old and not lawful anymore. And so among other things, I'm going to recommend possibly the repeal of a couple and amendments to some. And mainly I'm going to be seeking direction from the board on what to do with some other ordinances and give you some updates on a couple of things that are coming for the UDO. But primarily these are going to be general code of ordinances.
Great. Thank you. All right, that brings us to appointments. The first appointments is for the Adult Care Home Community Advisory Committee. It's item 11A.
I'll nominate Yvonne Mendenhall for position 7.
Second.
All right. Are there any, so Yvonne Mendenhall has been nominated for position 7. Are there any other nominations?
Commissioners, as you will see, there are several vacancies that have come open recently. I asked Max Mason, the chair, about these, and he let me know as they went along, but I wanted them all together. One was a resignation. They did not want a second term. One was an illness. One moved out of the county, and one had medical reasons outside of personal illness. So they are in the process of vetting applicants because this does require one-year training.
Does require what? I'm sorry?
It does require one-year training term, so they do try to vet their applicants, and hopefully we'll have something by the end of the year to fill some of these positions, according to their chair.
Is that a state law requirement that someone has to get trained for a year before they can be appointed to the
Statutory
committee?
requirement for this board.
I have a question.
Yes.
So can this board function without those people right now?
Well, according to Max, they said they can because they are in the process, but as I was telling him, they have they have a total of 12 on the board, 12, but they have 4 vacancies, so yes.
All right.
According to him, I know, I did ask him that question.
All right, so a motion's been
It all occurred
made.
very recently.
All right.
I'm sorry.
No, I just want to make sure that's it before I say anything else.
I'm done.
All right, the motion has been made and seconded to appoint Yvonne Mendenhall to position number 7. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes 7-0. Item 11B is the Chapel Hill Planning Commission, and there is one vacancy to fill.
I'll nominate Catherine Roberts.
Second.
All right, any other nominations?
It's like crack.
All right, a motion has been made and seconded to appoint Catherine Roberts to position 1 on the Chapel Hill Planning Commission. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Item 11C, the Commission for the Environment.
I'd like to nominate Bill Ward for position 4.
Second?
Other nominations? All right, the motion has been made and seconded to nominate Bill Ward for position 4. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Item 11D, the Hillsborough Planning Board.
I'd like to nominate Jeffrey Scott, position 1.
Second.
All right, any other nominations? Motion's been made and seconded to appoint Jeffrey Scott to position number 1. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Item 11E, the Historic Preservation Commission.
I'd like to nominate Stephen Peck for position 4.
Second.
Any other nominations? Discussion? Motion's been made and seconded to appoint Stephen Peck to position 4. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Next up is the Orange County Parks and Recreation Council. There's one vacancy.
I'll nominate a fellow Bingham Townshipper, Tim Tippin.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any other nominations? All right, motion's been made and seconded to appoint Tim Tippin to position number 9. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Item 11F is, oh, there's not, that was 11F.
Ask a quick question on this, on these appointments.
You could ask a slow question on these appointments if you wanted to. It's only 8:29.
All right, then. So I'm just curious, sometimes people contact us and express their interest in these boards, right? And they may be very well qualified in their own right, yet there's not an opening that they can fit into, like they don't have a certain professional background that's required. Do we send any information back after a meeting like this and say you weren't chosen because the only opening was for someone with a certain background?
No, we have never done that in the past. Most of the information, when they submit an application, it says that, it kind of gives them the process in the application process and how does it go. We usually only notify them if they are appointed.
And I guess people don't typically call up and demand an explanation, right? So it's not been
I
an
haven't
issue.
since I've been here, no, sir.
All right, so I'll just email this person myself.
Yeah, that's what I do when people
Yeah.
ask me.
Okay.
All right, anything else? All right, then, motion to...
Oh, yes, I do have one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to compliment Gary Donaldson on the, that first quarter report. It was very impressive. So thank you. I'm done.
Anything else? Anybody else? This is the chance. Donna, you're good?
I think I'm done for this evening.
All right, then. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.